Desde abajo como varios comenzamos, yo empezaba desde los 14 años. Piensan que muy fácil es el contrabando, va subiendo y los putazos aguantando, y está muy cabrón. Un momento voy a prenderme un tabaco, pa' seguirles con la historia que hoy les canto. El amigo, la confianza fue ganando, cada día se fue más relacionando. Sigue firme hoy. Estatales con rango de inteligencia, en la tía me cayeron a la fuerza. 5 horas me tuvieron secuestrado, pa' acabarla me tumbaron una feria, la alcancé a librar. Pero es como todo, cuando está subiendo, rolan los mitotes, te cae el gobierno, hoy hasta la DEA me pide unos versos, quieren que les cante, yo no estoy de acuerdo. Hace poco un sheriff me torció moviendo, jale de trabajo, pa' que se los niego, casi estoy seguro que fue por un dedo, alguna madrina por aquí en San Diego. Y con esto nos vamos hasta Tijuana. Suena la marca registrada. 26 número de la camiseta, de los cholos el doctor para la empresa. Noticieros que difaman mi persona, ya le quieren poner precio a mi cabeza. No se va a poder. Mi San Judas en mi pecho va con tinta, ese viejo es el que a mí siempre me cuida. Una Glock 19 para defensa, está en uno pa' cualquier tipo de ofensa. No soy cagazón. En Cherokee me paseó por Chula Vista y también me la roló por San Isidro. Cuento con el amor de mi madrecita, con mi esposa estoy de más agradecido, mucho me apoyó. La historia es muy larga y el papel muy corto, son muchas hazañas y no me echo loco. A esos del gobierno les mando un saludo, ya se dieron cuenta que uso bien el coco. Para el compa Pavel y para el pelón, también para el Cruces y el Gavilanzón, pa' mi compa Búho, ahí va el saludón, también para Italia, a la orden estoy. Saben que no miento, que tengo razón, paren bien la oreja, presten atención, les dejé receta en esta canción, nomás pa' que sepan quién es el doctor.
Man, Benny, where did you get that song, man? That song with the pictures? I mean, Ed, San Diego, Tijuana. The only thing they didn't say was the two legends that are with us, Jim and Steve. That's the only thing that they didn't say. Where did you get the song at, Benny?
Well, I can't tell you who I got it from because he's an undercover guy, but he's an undercover guy somewhere in California. He's on a task force. So he always comes up with the good music. Sometimes when I'm stuck and I say, what kind of song to play on a video, I'll reach out to him and right away he'll find one for me.
Wow.
Hey, David, they get that song list from all the T3s, bro. From all the
like I said, they talking about Tijuana. They didn't talk about Pallillos. They talk San Diego, but they didn't talk about the legends. Guys, what an honor. And Benny's going to he's going to introduce you, but Jim, Bird, Steve, Duncan, what an honor it is to have you guys. And, I was telling the guys, we had a group meeting last night with all the hosts, and I was telling them, one of the things about that we're so blessed that the guys that we never got a chance to work with, but we always heard about them, and those that we did get a chance to work with, we bring them on the show. They share their legendary stories. Man, it's that's the reason why we have this show, to bring men like you on our show to share your stories so they will never be forgotten. But guys, it's not about me. Benny's going to do the intros, but before we do, we're going to do what we always do. We always welcome everybody that comes on early watching us. We got Ceci Escano. Our sister has been with us from the very beginning from Riverside. And for whatever reason, San Diego PD, gang detective and robbery detective, legend Chris Kilby, we've been having some problems logging him in. I thought I fixed the problem, but obviously I didn't. But he just texts me. He goes, Dave, I'm watching. And he's been with us from the very beginning. We got Lupus, Steve. He's on because of you. He's watching us. And we got Jim DeJanis. Once again, man, Batman, the guy's a legend with Pelican Bay, was there from the beginning. Did, I think, over 17 years there. Legend. He's watching us live right now from Thailand. And we got San Diego PD legend. We can't wait to have you back on with us tomorrow. Doug Collier, waiting to hear from my buddy Steve Duncan. We got a brother that's been watching us for quite a while now. Let me see if I can catch you on right up here real quick. Get Steve out of the way. And it's Prayers for Souls. Hello, fellas. Jesus Christ loves you. Thank you, brother, for reminding us. We got Cocaine Cowboys. We got Chris Hastings watching us live right now from the Philippines. It's 8 o'clock over here. Well, it's 8 o'clock my time. It's 8 o'clock in the morning where he's at. We got Mike Martinez. I know you know him, Steve, watching us from Littleton, Colorado. Mike, and we got Big BJ Juarez has been watching us from the very beginning. Once again, thank you, brother, watching us from Long Beach. I believe he's working, and he takes a break while watching us. We got Daniel Virgin. Saludos, señorones. Mil gracias. We got Al, Big Al, watching us. Two true experts. This is going to be good. You do owe me a call, Al. You do owe me a call, and please call me because we got some really good things we want to talk to you about. I think you could help us. I'm not going to mention it here. And Cocaine Cowboys, and here we go. We got Robert Lopez, San Diego PD, another legend from San Diego PD. We got Felony Fuzz watching us, and Sergio Martinez. Thank you, brother, for watching us. And you know what? That's it, man. And I know a lot more people are going to be coming on, but thank you very much for watching us. With that said, Benny, it's all yours, brother.
Well, we got retired FBI agent Jim Burt and retired CalGOJ Special Agent Steve Duncan. They're joining us today, and both men are well-known lawmen in San Diego and throughout the country. You know, Jim Burt retired in 2009 after 31 years of impeccable service, man, with the FBI. Jim's areas of expertise are transnational kidnappings, corruption, organized crime, human trafficking, and other violent crimes. Jim was also a liaison in Mexico for many years. He's very well respected in Mexico. Steve Duncan retired in 2016. Steve was assigned to the DEA task force as a TFO, assigned to work with San Diego gangs that work alongside the Arellano Felix group in Tijuana, also known as the Tijuana Cartel. Which was a very powerful Mexican drug cartel based out of, again, Tijuana. Steve is a highly respected agent with the Violent Crimes Task Force gang group and the Cross-Border Violence Task Force. Tonight, Steve and Jim join us to discuss Los Pallillos gang. I mean, this is an old story that needs to be told. I mean, we are going to hear from both gentlemen on who Los Pallillos were. Los Pallillos were involved in a series of violent crimes in San Diego County. Those crimes included kidnappings, drug distribution, tortures, and they were responsible for a series of murders in San Diego County. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, Benny. Steve just bugged out. He's watching us from an undisclosed place somewhere in Northern California by the Redwoods somewhere. So he'll be coming in and out because he's having some problems with the internet. But before we hear from Jim, let me go ahead and show this video. Here we go.
Muriatic acid seen here to dispose of their bodies. They also kidnapped this man, Eduardo Gonzalez Tostado, a wealthy businessman who was rescued by the FBI and SWAT team. Inside the home, a chilling scene. Investigators found acid, semi-automatic weapons, handguns, tasers, and chains. The gang members buried their victims' bodies in a San Ysidro ranch. This video played during the trial showing heavy equipment used to find the victims' remains.
Taking care of us.
Here we go, Betty.
Yeah, I mean, quite a few videos out there on the internet on this group, you know. Steve, I mean, no, Jim, and when Steve comes in, he can jump in on this. Feel free to jump anytime, both of you gentlemen. Who were Los Pallillos?
Is Steve on?
No, he's not on. He's not on. I guess he had some problems where he jumped to the next trailer, so he'll jump on. But go ahead.
Well, let me give you guys the disclaimer first off. I told you before, I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to pretend like the Palillos was my case. I was involved because I was working all these kidnappings at the time, and we learned about these bodies that were showing up in San Diego County. At that point, from the FBI perspective, we kind of Alex Horan, who was just mentioned here a minute ago in a pre-podcast chat, and Steve and I and some of Dave's border liaison guys, we started what we call the kidnapping working group, and people from the different agencies, different PDs in San Diego County that were working these cases. We all got together and compared notes, and we started realizing, hey, this stuff is connected. So basically what it was, and Steve can give much more detail, but basically it was a group of cartel kidnappers from Tijuana. And the short version is they fell into, they had problems with the group down there, and they realized that they could not stay. And so for their own safety, they came across the border into San Diego. So what do kidnappers and murderers do? Well, they kidnap and they murder. And they practice their trade up here for a few years. Like I said, it was very disturbing for us to see some of this, the stuff that was similar, was frequently seen and commonplace in Tijuana. And all of a sudden, we're finding tortured bodies here in Bonita and San Diego and Chula Vista, gun battles in the street with cops, stuff that we weren't used to. So it's a big deal. And when the case finally got put together and got solved by San Diego PD Detective Newquist and a bunch of other people that were involved, it was a huge prosecution. I stayed involved, and the two DAs actually had me testify in those cases, not because I had evidence about the actual kidnappings, but because I was put on as an expert witness to talk about cartel kidnappings and how they are done south of the border, and then what aspects of those kidnappings done by a group of cartel kidnappers, how they did their thing up here. With a lot of similarities. There were some things that were different the way they were done up here for a number of reasons, but basically it was the same group doing what they did in Mexico, except right here in our backyard. It was like I said, a very disturbing thing for all of us to see that it was happening. Happily, people in San Diego County work so well together, and if you ever talk to federal law enforcement people, the guys in San Diego, they don't get it because they've always been here. But people that come from the FBI or the DEA from another part of the country will come to San Diego County, and they'll just be amazed at how wonderful the working relationships are. There's no jealousy, there's no territorialism, there's nothing like that. It's the leaders get along, the agents get along, the cops and detectives get along, information is shared. The task forces are, they work because we have people from all the different agencies in them. I may have said this last time I was on, but it's something that bears repeating. I came into the FBI in 1978. And in those days, the FBI was not working drug cases. It was the old time FBI. And we did bank robberies and kidnappings and extortions and picked up fugitives and thefts of interstate shipment and all that kind of stuff. But we were doing it pretty much on our own in a lot of respects. And we weren't sharing information. We were the FBI. People were supposed to give us information. And then we started working drugs in the early 80s and got into this task force thing. And we all realized, wow, this is the way to do it. And I was working drug cases in North San Diego County, out of our little Carlsbad office. And if I had a DEA agent, if I had a local cop, if I had immigration people and customs people, somebody from INS, and maybe a Cal DOJ guy, we could do anything. There are things that those agencies can do, I couldn't do. We had some resources and things that we could add to the mix. But if you had somebody from all the different local agencies and federal agencies and state agencies, that task force could really move. And that's what San Diego learned. We could do all that. So basically what I'm saying is we started getting these representatives from the different police agencies, as well as FBI, And in fact, if I recall, we actually met over in the DEA, FBI, AFO cartel task force building in their space over there. But the cooperation was wonderful, and notes were shared. And pretty soon we realized this is one group doing this. And then, as is always the case, you work a case, you prepare, and then you get a break. And the big break we got was when one of the victims' wives called and said, "Hey, my husband's been kidnapped." I think that for the most part, the Pallillos gang was counting on nobody going to law enforcement. But she did. And with that, we were able to do the investigation and identify where they were and rescue the guy. He was going to be killed, no question about it. The ransom was going to be paid and he was going to be killed. But happily, we, and I said, not only we as in I, but we, local law enforcement, San Diego PD, Chula Vista PD, and the FBI were able to intervene and rescue this guy.
Hey, Jim, I have a question. So you mentioned the importance, the fact that you guys were task forces, and we got some time right now. So I had mentioned Alex, and I wish I would have logged on earlier. Alex Horan from FBI, yeah. And I remember I was a investigation sergeant, detective sergeant at the time of Calexico. He comes around and he's just coming to Imperial County, and he's saying, "Hey, you know what? I really want to start working with the locals." And you know what? Let's face it, Jim. It's always been known that usually, like the feds didn't really play well with the locals. Even the state agencies, some of the state agencies, they just they looked at a small agency or the locals as, we're better than they are. Not all of them, but some. So when Alex came on board, he brought us all together. Then we restarted our. We already had it going, but with his help, the Imperial County Homicide / Major Crimes Task Force, and he helped me in the doctor's case that I did. Alex actually kept an eye on my guy in Houston. This guy was in Houston, and he had agents over there. Would put this guy to bed every night for me until I got the warrant. Once I got the warrant, I called Alex and him, along with the marshals. They brought him all the way to Imperial County. They put him on a bus and they put him in the front of our of our PD with a big old bow saying to Chalo from Alex and the crew, here's your warrant on your homicide. Very important. And like you said, task forces. It looks like you said it's the task force that if it wasn't for all of you guys working together as a team, it would be. You guys probably would have still been trying. You guys, I think they would have solved it eventually, but I don't think they would have gone as lucky as it did on this case.
Yeah. One thing, again, one of the great quotes that influenced my career as an agent was an older agent one time said the stark truth that made so much sense. He goes, "What you guys don't understand is that we need the local cops way more than they need us." And when you get that in your head and you realize they can make my job so much easier, I may be able to add something to them, and certainly we want to be available and do whatever we can. And it's a two-way street. But the bottom line is the FBI depends on local cops all the time.
And it's good to have somebody that has so many resources, especially an agency that doesn't have anything and Calexico. And even the bigger agencies, but with us was like, hey, you know what? Let me call Alex. I know he's got a contact somewhere that can lead me here. I'm taking stuff to the lab, man, in Quantico, and actually getting the stuff within 2-3 months, not 9 months a year. And that's because you had somebody on the inside that was pushing it through him and his boss, saying, hey, you know what? This is an important case for these guys. We need results.
And that is one of the things that the Bureau can offer, is that we have people all over the country and all over the world. When I was working in Guadalajara and El Consulado down there, I make visits to the both the state and the federal agencies and tell them, I'm your resource. How can I help you? And they go, what do you mean? And they said, is there any work you need to have done in the States? What kind of work? Well, do you have any fugitives up there? And they go, well, yeah, we have lots of murderers and drug dealers and people running all over the United States. You know where they are? Yeah, we know where they are.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, let's get back. I have a question here. Hey, Jim, how did Los Pallillos end up in San Diego County, and what type of criminal activities were they involved from what you discovered during your investigation?
Yeah. Like I said, there was a disgusto. There was a problem that they had with the leadership down there. I believe Rojas' brother, if I'm not mistaken, the main guy was killed, and they realized, hey, we got to get out of here. We can't stay here. We're all going to be in trouble. So yeah, Victor was already killed. So his brother and the rest of the gang came across the border and started, like I said, plying their trade, doing what they do. They would kidnap people and they murdered people, and their victims were mainly Mexican cartel guys that were up in San Diego.
So Jim, those Pallillos were originally operated in Tijuana, right, under the AFO.
Yeah,
and then they fell apart. They were a cell, they were an enforcement cell. So after they killed the main guy, the Palillo, from the Pallillos, they moved to San Diego. They kind of, bagged everything up and they were out of there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they were like I said, they were kidnappers. They worked for the cartel, and they were one of the groups that were doing their abductions down there. And when they realized they couldn't stay because it was too dangerous for them, they came up here.
Hey, Jim, I was reading right now as you're talking about this Victor Rojas Lopez. I guess he was the leader of Los Pallillos, and it was an enforcement crew for the AFO. And he had a group called Los Titas, and it was a group of his relatives and also guys, I guess, from his area. And they killed him in 2003. And after they murdered him, a lot of the guys that were part of his crew were U.S. citizens. And this is who they are right here. So either U.S. citizens or resident aliens, they had cards to cross the border. So that's when they came across the border and they basically started targeting the AFO living in California that we were not aware of until they became victims. Is that correct?
Yeah. And there's Jorge Rojas right there on the top row in the middle.
Yes.
The leader of the group up here in San Diego.
San Diego. And he was the brother of the leader from Tijuana who was murdered.
Exactly.
Victor Rojas Lopez. Okay, got it.
Hey, Jim, were these guys like contract kidnappers that would work with any organization, or they were true just to Sinaloa or to the FO?
Well, these guys were working for the Tijuana cartel. Again, Steve is more the expert on exactly when it shifted from the Arellano Felix to the Chapo Guzman. To me, it was all the same. And to Tijuana, it was all the same. There's a criminal organization running the city. And I was most of the time involved because I was working with families that were going through kidnapping. So I was working as a negotiator with families that were being kidnapped. So I'm talking to them. I'm not as into the dates and the details of the whole AFO scene. I was mainly focused on just those kidnappings. Steve Duncan can tell you a lot more about that. Hopefully we get him back on. He can answer some of those questions better than I can. But my main responsibility, like I said, was I was working these kidnappings, cross-border kidnappings. So the cartel was doing these kidnappings down there. And to answer your question, Chalo, there weren't independent groups of kidnappers doing this down there. There were different cells, lots of different groups that were doing it, but they were all doing it under the umbrella of the cartel. Nobody was out doing it on their own. If they did it on their own, they'd be killed. Anybody that went without authorization from the leadership was in peril for sure. They weren't going to be able to do that for very long. And every once in a while, we'd get a case where I'd start talking to the victims and listening to the phone calls, the tapes they were making, and I'd say, this is what we call cartel light. This is not the cartel. These are knuckleheads pretending to be the cartel. And they better watch out, because if they get when they get caught, they're all going to be killed. There was a time when the consulate in Tijuana contacted me and said, "Hey, we've had a couple of express kidnappings where a guy's picked up, beaten up. They take him around, get money out of an ATM. He asks for $3,000 or $4,000 to be wired from his family, and they let him go. And that had not been happening in Tijuana, and they had 2 of these within a week. And they said, "What do you know about this?" And I said, "I'll tell you what. I guarantee you, either the cartel is starting a whole new thing, which they've never authorized before, or the guys that did that are going to be found and killed, and we won't have any more." And sure enough, we had those 2. We never had any more. That was not authorized criminal activity by the cartel, and it didn't last very long. So a long answer to your question, Chalo. They were working as one of the kidnapping cells under the umbrella of the cartel in Tijuana. And when they fell into disfavor with the group down there, when Rojas's brother got killed, then they came up to San Diego.
Hey, Jim, so what type of people were they kidnapping in Mexico? Was it business owners, rich people, well-to-do people? I mean, or other drug organizations, other people from the other DTOs?
Are you talking about the victims?
Yeah. Who were the victims for the Pallillos and the other guys?
Okay. Generally speaking, for the time I was working in San Diego, and I worked kidnappings sometimes in the 80s and the 90s, we always assumed that most of the kidnappings were drug related. That the cartel had a enforcement wing that would kidnap people that need to be kidnapped because they weren't paying their taxes, or because they snitched, or because they had some other problem with the cartel. And then in around 2005, I realized this was all changing. That's when the number of kidnappings skyrocketed, and we realized that no longer are they just kidnapping guys that they think need to be kidnapped because they're against the cartel. They're just businessmen. They're people that own print shops, or a hardware store, or doctors or attorneys, or anybody that looks like they have the resources to pay a ransom. So most of our victims that I was working were people that lived in Chula Vista. Their kids went to school in the South Bay. They were either U.S. citizens or resident aliens, but they owned businesses in Tijuana. And so they would be kidnapped when they were at work, or when they'd be driving to work, or something like that. Up here, it was a little bit different. The Pallillos, their victims were pretty much all people involved in trafficking.
Yeah, so they probably switched over from, like you said, doing it to pay a debt to somebody got into it and or sold or did something in the wrong area, to it became more of a profit making scheme for them. Wow.
It was all about money.
Hey, so do you think kidnappings, in we're looking decades now, difference was more prevalent back then in 2005 than it is right now, or is just the fact that people have already got used to all these news of kidnappings that it's not out there? People just become numb to this.
No, Charlo, good question. Now, in 2005, we saw this change, and the guy that was behind it was a guy named Theo, who was arrested in January of 2010. I retired in 2009, but I was really excited when I found out that they finally picked this guy up. He was the mastermind of all the kidnapping cells in Tijuana for the cartel. He originally was an Arellano Felix guy. He switched over to Chapo Guzman's team. But he was the guy that apparently really made the push to everybody to realize, hey, this is a moneymaker. Some people were theorizing at the time they were making as much off kidnappings than they were off drugs. It was a gigantic, a huge business. And so to answer your question, no, there's nothing like that's going on like it was then. Today, it's not happening like it was then. There still are kidnappings, but not the straight kidnap for ransom just for profit. Now they've pretty much gone back to drug trafficking and extortion and other things that cartels do, but they are not kidnapping hundreds of people at a time like they were back then.
Hey, Jim, we have Fernando Puente, the CEO and also the host for El Borde podcast out of Tijuana. Great guy. He's been on our show. He says the government does the kidnapping now. What do you think about that, Jim?
Well, I've been out of the business for 15 years. I retired a long time ago. So I admit I'm not up to date on what's going on. Although I do from my understanding, I'll stand by what I said. I don't think they're kidnapping businessmen anywhere near like they used to. It was strange period of time where the world was just turned upside down in Tijuana. You couldn't talk to anybody in TJ that didn't know somebody that had been kidnapped. It was everywhere. We had victims getting kidnapped together, held together. Of course, they're blindfolded the whole time. They get out and they go to a school program and find out their kids are in the same class. I mean, they're just everywhere.
And one of the comments that Lupe made, he said it used to be, I guess before Teo, that the only snatched up people that owed debts, and I think Chalo mentioned that, prior to Teo becoming active in the early and late 2000s.
Yeah, that all changed.
That all changed. Yeah.
I was talking to victims, mainly dealing with the wives because their husbands had been kidnapped. And like I said, these were nice people that were not involved in anything crooked. There's hardworking folks that had, done well. And sometimes I was surprised at the cartel. I was disappointed that they didn't do a better job of sizing up their victims because some of them really didn't have that much money. I thought they should have done a better background investigation. But they weren't tremendously rich people. They were just owners. They had property in California. They had property in Tijuana, and they could come up with, $100,000, $200,000. They weren't always the ultra rich. Anyway, I'm glad to see Steve's back.
Yeah, Steve's back. Thank God, Steve. Hopefully you'll be on for the rest of the show. But Steve, since we have you, can you take us from this moment on? Jim covered a little bit of it. Take us from this moment on. Victor Rojas Lopez, who was he? We talked a little bit about him. You get a little bit in depth, and then how the Pallillos came to the United States, and then we'll jump in with the questions where we left off. If you could just take us there, Steve.
Yeah, I'm Victor Lopez was recruited by Ismael Higuera Guerrero, and to be a trafficker and enforcer for him. Ismael Higuera Guerrero ran the face of the Arellano Felix organization from the time of the murder of the Cardinal up to his arrest in 2000. So Victor joins the AFO, the Arellano Felix organization, and then he goes to work for one of the lieutenants. Initially, he worked for a guy named Quemado, who's in custody in the U.S., and then he went to work for Saul Montes de Oca, who's in custody in Puente Grande. But these were the lieutenants that talked directly to the dispatcher, who was Fernando Sanchez Arellano, the nephew of the Arellano Felix brothers. He was the dispatcher, so all communications went through him so that he could reach out to his cousin or his uncle Javier, who was in the Cabo area, and get his blessing on whatever transmission came up through this network of radios that these guys had. And then they would also deconflict at the very top of the organization with their dirty police, and then that message would be passed down. I'm talking about the radio frequencies, and I'm sorry, but that's how I know who Victor worked for. He had his own crew, and he came in conflict with Javier Arellano Felix's Tigrillo's brother-in-law, Jorge Briseño, and Briseño wanted him killed, and Javier called Victor Lopez in to talk. It was actually one of Victor Lopez's guys who had insulted Cholo at a nightclub in TJ. So they call in Victor Lopez, who is the boss of this guy, Monkey, and they say, hey, he disrespected my brother-in-law. You need to take care of it, which means kill him. And Victor didn't do it, or he didn't do it right away. So they grabbed Victor, they beat him, killed him, put him in the back of a vehicle, in the trunk of a vehicle, and he was killed. His little brother, who was also on the crew, Jorge Lopez Rojas, took over. But the entire crew was green lit, so there was a anybody could kill him. And so they knew their time was up in TJ. And so they fled to San Diego. And Jorge Lopez was pissed because his brother got killed. And so he started a group here in San Diego that were anti-Arellano Felix organization. And through his web of informants and, females that were able to, move around all these different groups, he was able to identify, pick up, get huge ransoms, and then most of the time kill these guys, and then all for the sake of getting back at the Arellanos, revenge.
So now they're in San Diego. What happens next? What's the first thing that happens? I mean, the murder, the kidnapping. What starts?
Okay, first in early 2004, they call our hotline, our Arellano Felix organization hotline. We have all these $2 to $5 million rewards for these brothers and their lieutenants. They called, they wanted to meet. And so we all went out we set up a meeting in Fashion Valley. And whenever somebody calls a hotline and wants to meet in person, we take the whole crew with us. So about 10 of us from the task force went out to Fashion Valley to Nordstrom's coffee shop there. And we were down on the bottom and up on the second level watching this meet take place. And as we're watching this meet take place, we see about 15 young Mexican males watching also. And so we knew that they had their own team there. And so we told our undercover, get the hell out of there. Not a good time. And so we went back to the office. What they were trying to do was sell us a disc of about 80 photographs of these Arellano Felix Cartel members taking pictures for their PGR credentials, their federal police credentials. And so we backed out, and then the FBI got a call, and they bought it, and they posted the pictures, which was very helpful. And a lot of the guys in Los Pallillos were in those pictures, but they were trying to help us out. They wanted us to do their work. But shit, the government takes such a long time. And, and DEA and FBI at the time, shame on them, weren't talking to each other real good. And I used to get caught in the middle of all that. But they ended up posting it on the internet. And we started identifying these people in the same suit. They were all in the same suit taking pictures for their credentials. And so, but anyways, they tried to get us to do their work. And I think they got frustrated. And then they took matters into their own hand. They built up their group. And anybody associated with the Arellanos in San Diego, they would pick up, get these huge ransoms, and usually kill these guys. And so there were homicides. The first 3 homicides were in Chula Vista. The detective that had the case, that had these signs of cartel, right in your face, never picked up the phone and called us at the task force, at the Arellano Felix task force. And so he had 3 bodies in this car, his very first one. And then he got another one by the Coors Amphitheater with Del Chapo written on the back. So you got cartel signs. You've got cartel signs plain. This guy did not pick up the phone and call anybody. So this is 2004, 2005. So we have 4 bodies. The FBI is getting anonymous tips from a female, and she's trying to point us in the wrong direction. And I believe that was Nancy Mendoza, the girl that ended up getting life without parole. She was the lure. She would lure a lot of these guys from the gym at LA Fitness in Chula Vista and Eastlake. So these guys were getting, there were, I think, 9 or 10 homicides in San Diego. There were about 20 kidnappings. There were three or four more homicides in Kansas City, Missouri, that these guys had a cell out there. but it wasn't. And then we got a case in the sheriff's jurisdiction in the summer of 2005, Ricardo Escobar Luna. And we were watching them at the time. We were watching all these guys because they were all good crooks, you know. They were all on our radar. But these guys were dressing up as cops, picking them up, taking them to a safe house, getting ransoms, you know, beating the crap out of them, torturing them and killing them, even dissolving some of them in acid here in the United States. So, yeah, it was crazy. And then the sheriff case, the guy called us. Jeff Maxim was the homicide detective. He called us right away. And at the time, we were just forming our kidnapping work group. And Jimmy was there. Jimmy was one of the players. And it was all the guys like you, David, that were involved, that cared about what's going on in the law enforcement community. So it might not have been any one of our jobs, but what was happening is we were getting all this spillover violence, this cartel violence in San Diego. And nobody was really talking to each other. None of the homicide detectives were until Jeff Maxon called.
Hey, Steve, could I break you? Steve,
Yeah,
could I
go
break
ahead.
you for a quick second? I put up the picture. We have all the kidnappings that they were involved from 2004, 2007. Within 3 years, they were involved in 17 kidnappings. Out of the 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were murdered. And that was in a 3-year period.
Yeah, 7 were murdered,
17.
and the last
Yeah.
2 were murdered also, but they were dissolved in acid. That should be in green.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Mark Leone and Mark Leone and Cesar Uribe, and then when we were able to save the very last victim crook, Ed Tostado Gonzalez.
Hey, Steve. So the 2 of them were made pozole. They made
Yes.
pozole. That's what
Yeah,
they
they
call
were
it.
made
Pozole.
Pasoli on Garber Avenue in Paradise Hills.
In the United States.
How was that done, Steve? I mean, people that are listening to us through a podcast, what does it take to make pozole? How they did it? What do they do?
They had 2 metal barrels. They had a heat source, water, caustic soda or lye, and they used acid, some type of acid. And they put the bodies in there. They killed them first. They strangled them first. They got 2 ransoms because I was dealing with one of their wives who didn't want to report it to the police because she was getting terrorized by them. You know, they had took her husband, took his Nextel, that's what we were using at the time, and would call her with his Nextel and say, "We got your husband, get your money together. We know where you live." They would put him on the phone and he'd say, "These guys are you know, they're the real deal. Get money together, sweetie, and they're going to call you, and then you do what they tell you to do." So she paid 2 ransoms, and you know, all her jewelry and cars, whatever she had, she paid that. And then after the second ransom, they told her that she was going to release him, and he was able to talk to her. But then they took him downstairs from upstairs, the 2-story house, and they kicked these guys in the stomach, knocked the wind out of them, and then slipped the garrote around their neck and just twist and twist. They were dissolved in acid, and then after they were dissolved at the Garber residence in Paradise Hill, they were taken out to Sunset Avenue in kind of the South San Diego area where all the horses are near the border, all the ranches, and they were the liquid waste was buried there in a 6-foot ditch.
Hey, Steve, so what was the neighborhood and what was the reaction of the neighborhood knowing this was happening, or once they found out that happened?
They didn't know that till after the fact, you know, and you know, we were playing catch up too, because we had murders in different jurisdictions, and the detectives didn't start talking to us till the 4th homicide, and that was Jeff Maxim's. And then at that time, we had a very high level source that was meeting with these guys personally, and our source was connected to Chapo Guzman indirectly, and they wanted our source to go to Chapo and say, "Hey, we're doing your work here. We're against the Arellanos too. We need soldiers. We need equipment, and we need money." and we were recording this. And this was around, I want to say September 2005. And so we were recording this. And the first meeting, they basically threw out their first 4 homicides. The 3 guys in the van, that was us. And the guy by Coors Amphitheater with Del Chapo on his back, that was us. So we got those details that only the homicide investigator might have, as far as the cartel signs that were written on the vehicles and the ink that was written on one of the victims' back that said Del Chapo. So at the time, Dave, it's 2004, 2005. Everybody knows who the Arellano Felix organization is. They're the ones that, most impact San Diego, and the detective never called us. And
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's unbelievable. And there's so many lessons to be learned in this case.
Yeah.
So we have a high level source into him. We're getting information. We can't give up this source because he's extremely valuable and, it was just very complex. And
Hey,
complex.
Steve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you know why the detective didn't call? That person didn't call you guys? I mean, there's a task force, somebody that's involved in police work. Who's doing what around your county. You hear something, you reach out to them, you say, "Hey, man, this is kind of some weird stuff." Why?
Laziness, apathy.
Yeah.
The cops in our circle, we work hard. We cared. There are some that that don't pick up the phone and call, and that's sad. It really is sad. If these were innocent people, I would feel even worse. But people were dying because we weren't sharing information. Another lesson to be learned by this. When you have a homicide and there's clear cartel signs of the top cartel guy in Tijuana written in dust on the window, Tigrillo, you should pick up the phone and call somebody that knows about Tigrillo. And they didn't. And then it was Jeff Maxson that called us about his homicide, Ricardo Esparza Luna, and then the meetings that we were having about the same time. And then a couple days later, Rich Diamapo responds to a shooting, a home invasion, and he gets ambushed himself because he's the only cop chasing these guys, 5 guys in a Suburban, after they shoot up this drug trafficker's house. And he gets ambushed and they fire a few rounds at him and he's got to take cover behind his vehicle. And at that point, with the information we had a couple days before from our high-level source, and coupled with the fact that a cop got shot at, we were pissed. And so I called Chula Vista, and the guy that had the case was a really good detective. God, I forgot his name, but just a really good detective. And he had the case of the shooting at Richard Diamapo, who was a Chula Vista officer that was shot at. And the next day we sent our high-level enforcement back into our high-level source back into Los Pallillos. And they said, that cop yesterday, that was us. This is where we stashed the vehicle. It's in Plaza Zapata in DJ. And there's a bunch of cop uniforms in there because they were dressing as cops when they were taking these guys down. They were going to San Diego police uniforms and getting police uniforms and badges. And, they even had lights on their van. But that's how they were picking these guys up. And so anyways, yeah, I call Brent. His name was Brent. And I call Brent and I go, listen, Brent, we're having a meeting with the guys that shot at Rich. And we know where the car is. And since I'm the local, I'm not afraid to talk to the locals. I'm not afraid to talk to the feds. And so I called Brett. He goes, Steve, it's late. I can't do it right away, but thank you so much. And I go, no, we can do it. We have a team in TJ that can do it. And so we recovered the Suburban and brought it back to the U.S. because it was evidence. And then I got transferred. But next question.
Steve, let me ask you about the
Kamala
van.
wanted me to pick up tin cans.
So, Steve, let me ask you about the body where they were found. Where they were stacked up in a van in San Diego and Claremont. Now, how did that call come in? Was it a radio call from a citizen reporting a foul odor, or did we stumble into it?
Yeah, a citizen was walking their dog. She saw fluid leaking from the vehicle because it was on an incline on Brandywine towards Palomar, and
It was in Chula Vista, Benny. You mentioned Claremont. It was in Chula Vista.
this was in Chula Vista, the triple homicide.
Okay.
And so the van's pointed uphill, and there's fluid leaking. They find a body. These guys, they'll remove the center seat of these vans so that they can put their victims in there. And so they put one victim in there. They put two in the back. They threw money all over the place, tucked it behind their ears. They were sending a message. They wrote Puerta Grillo in the dust in the vehicle. There were so many signs, on this triple homicide. But again, we didn't get a call. We didn't know about it until Los Pallillos met with our source and basically threw out their resume to try to impress our source.
Hey, Steve, where did they get the name Los Palillos?
That's funny. It's a funny story because I didn't know what Pallillos were, but Pallillos is toothpicks, and Victor's nickname was Pallillo, and so they named their cell after their dead, after Victor Lopez Rojas.
So when they would commit these murders, I think you had mentioned it because I remember going to one of your classes that they used to also put toothpicks either on the victims' bodies, also as a sign. Did they ever do that?
One of the last victims, Ivan Lozano, he was a distributor for the Arellanos. They put him in the back of the trunk of a vehicle, and they threw toothpicks down the crack of his ass. And it's funny because when Ron Newquist brought this into us, now not that one, he was in the trunk of a vehicle, but when Ron Newquist showed us this picture, I'm sitting there slamming my fist, and I don't know if you were there, Jimmy, but it was the kidnapping work group, and I'm slamming my fist, and I'm saying, "These toothpicks have got to mean something." And I'm a gringo. I don't know Spanish, and one of the gals across the table started laughing and says, "Steve, you're so funny." And I go, "What?" Because I was serious, and she goes, "Toothpicks are palillos," in Spanish. So we got a big laugh out of that, and I still, to this day, they still make fun of me about that. But yeah.
Hey, Steve, I would have sworn that he got kidnapped and killed by bakers. They were just trying to see if he was well done by sticking the toothpicks in him.
Yeah, I know, huh?
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to pick out apples there.
There you go.
Yeah, they would leave signs, which, and Ron Newquist had that murder. And there was one a month before. You keep showing it the picture of the SUV, silver SUV in South San Diego. His partner Brett, rest in peace. Brett Burkett had one a month, had that case, and Brett realized that his victim had been tased. Ron gets a case a month later in Claremont with the toothpicks in the guy's butt, and he had been tased. So they get the ribbons, the ribbons on the taser, and they go to where it's manufactured in Texas, and they're told that this is from the same gun, and it was bought here. Each of these taser ribbons leave it's like a fingerprint.
Yep.
So Brett and Ron knew that their victims were related. And so Ron picked up the phone, probably April or May of 2007. And we had already been working at the kidnapping work group. We already knew who these guys were. I had a brand new FBI agent, Dean Gibney, this was his first case, and he'll never have one like this again. But that kid just worked day and night, writing reports, documenting everything. He would go with me to meet with the sources, the spouses of these people that were getting killed, and he just really sunk his teeth into it. And then, once we arrested some of these guys, Marco Mercado from the DA's office got involved. So him and Dean and Ron had cubicles at the DA's office, and they worked for years, trying to bring this case to justice.
And you know what, Steve? Talking about bringing this case to justice, I want to show this picture up real quick, and if I see that Jim, that you are testifying there, I think you testified on the case. Let me go ahead and put this back up again. Can you tell us about the court proceedings? Because we got 5 more minutes, because we're going to continue next week. But Jim, we want to hear your testimony when you testified on this case, if you don't mind sharing it with us, Jim.
Yeah, again, I was testifying as an expert witness, and so James Fontaine and Mark Amador, the 2 prosecutors, had me in each of the different prosecutions. It was split up. They weren't all prosecuted at once. So 3 or 4 times I went into court, and I would start out the prosecution's case by them asking me how a cartel kidnapping was done. And then they did that to educate the people in the jury about what they're going to hear about. And then some of, like I said, the characteristics of the Pallillos kidnappings and murders were very, very similar to what they had been doing in Tijuana, because they were the cartel kidnappers. That's what they were. So my testimony was all about how a kidnapping went down. The fact that it was not just a bunch of guys that grabbed somebody and held them and then got a ransom and let them go. It was an assembly line. It was mass production. At that time, from 2005 on, it was there were many, many of these different cells, and everyone, they had people that got cars, people got weapons, people that located victims. They pay ransom, they pay a referral fee, for names that they could kidnap. In fact, I even had victims that I interviewed after the kidnapping tell me that while they were kidnapped, the captors actually asked them, and said, "Hey, you know anybody else we can kidnap? Maybe somebody you don't like, a rival, a business competitor, or your brother-in-law or somebody, and we'll give you a discount on the ransom that your wife has to pay to get you out if you give us some good names." So after they got a name, then they do a surveillance. They try to figure out, is this guy going to be easy to kidnap? Do we know what his schedule is? If he had the same schedule, left the house at the same time, went to the same coffee shop, went to work at the same time, went home for a siesta at the same time, easy. Put a check. Yeah, we can pick this guy up anytime. But if they had a guy on there and they surveilled him for a couple of days and they took a different car, left at different times, went different places, they just crossed out his name. They had so many potential victims. They would just say, I'm not going to waste my time sitting on a guy that we don't know where he's going to be. So they'd have the Levanton team, the guys that actually did the pickup. They come out there with baklavas, body armor, long barrel weapons. They were clearly tactically trained. They'd run into the store, or they'd either stop him at the street, block him at a street intersection, or just go into his place of business, put everybody on the floor, knock him on the side of the head, drag him out, throw him in the car, and then the kidnapping would begin. The wife would get a call from the kidnapper saying, "We got your husband. You owe us $1 million. Don't call the cops." Bam, click. First conversation's over. And they'd let that seep in, the terror rise. And then somebody from the shop would say, "Hey, they came in and picked up your husband. They kidnapped him." "Yeah, I know. They just called me." And then the cartel knew how to work with people's emotions. And sometimes they say, "Okay, we can get this done. Just give us some money." Next thing they know, the next call, screaming, swearing, threatening. "Forget it. You're taking too long. Obviously, you don't love him. We're just going to kill him," and hang up. And they would just mess with people's emotions, thinking that the more they scared them, the more likely they were to pay a big ransom. There are people that knuckleheads, low-level people that had to live with the people, the guards that stayed with the victims. They had multiple houses where they had the victims. And they weren't just one person in the house. There'd be 6 or maybe a dozen on different floors of the house. Somebody else, they had to get somebody to rent the houses. So they'd have people out looking for 2-story houses with a wall around them, which is the kind of house they like to keep their victims in. They'd move them from house to house. Then there was the negotiator, the guy that, like I said, knew how to toy with the emotions of the family. Then there'd be a release team, a surveillance team that would go out there when the drop was being made. They just say, drive across the border with your money, have your phone on, and we'll tell you what to do. And they tell them, drive straight, stop the car, get out, put the hood up, drive some more, make a right, stop in a parking lot. And then finally, at one point, they say, okay, pull over. They either say, put the money here by the lamppost, or sometimes they just said, duck your head and roll down the window, the passenger window on the front, leave the money in the front seat, and we'll reach in and grab it. And then they take the money. The victim would go back and receive a phone call that likely said, that was a nice down payment, but we're not going to release him. You owe us more money. And as the negotiator, I'd be able to tell the family how this whole thing was going to go down. They're not going to release them the first time. So I'm not going to get into my strategy or the strategy that we employed. I think that would not be correct. But I can certainly talk about what the cartel strategy was. I know we're probably running out of time here, but this is what I testified about in the Pallillos cases. They wanted me to explain how a kidnapping went down, how the whole thing was done, that there were firewalls. Some of the people guarding the victims, they didn't even know who the victims were, didn't know who kidnapped them. It's from some different group maybe, all under the cartel. But and they tell the family, if you send somebody out there to arrest us picking up the money, your husband's going to get killed, because the guy picking up the money doesn't know where the victims are. He didn't know who the victims are. He's just out there picking up the money that he brings back to the boss. It was all divided up.
Hey, Jim, I have a quick question. The victims of those Palillos here in San Diego, or in San Diego County, were they taken back to Mexico?
No.
They all stayed here. All 17 victims stayed here or died here, correct?
As far as I know. Yeah, crossing the border is a tough thing. And people would always ask me, well, why don't they do it up here? The reason why is because it's the United States. There are cops. There are off-duty cops. There are people who work at the border that are carrying weapons that are off-duty. If somebody sees something, they're going to intervene. In Mexico, they've got it covered. You know, yeah. They know they can operate freely. So only the Palillos who couldn't go back to Mexico, as far as I know, they were the only group doing anything like that up here.
Interesting. Hey, Jim, you know what? The time, our worst enemy, let me go ahead and add this up. Our worst enemy is with us. It looks like Steve. Where's Steve at?
I'm here.
Steve. There we go. Okay, perfect. Hey, guys, you know what? Our time has gone. But listen, next week we're going to have, and Benny's going to talk about him right now. We're going to have Ron Newquist. He'll
great.
talk about him coming on. We're going to go part 2. We'll probably start because I guess he wasn't the case agent. He was one of the case agents, but the main case agent was Mercado, correct?
Marco Mercado, yeah, for the DA's office. Okay. Dean Gibney for the FBI.
Okay.
And Ron Newquist for the San Diego PD. And if it wasn't for Ron picking up the phone and calling and saying, "Hey, we got something here,"
yeah,
we wouldn't have been able to put his 2 cases together. And at that time, I got a call from one of the victims' wives that didn't want to report it, in the formal way. And so I went out and met with her, and she told me about it. And, when she told me about it, I knew who had her husband. And so by this time, Ron Newquist came on board to our kidnapping work group. And, we were doing surveillances and everything. And we were trying to find those last 2 victims. And it wasn't until like 2.5 years later that we dug them up in South San Diego. They had been, dissolved and dumped there. And, we were able to, and Ron's wife now was there. She was a criminalist, and she helped us dig. Ron and Paul Connolly had to do all the digging, that and a backhoe, but Tammy was instrumental in identifying the bodies of our last 2 victims.
Wow. Well, you know what? We're going to continue that next week. It is going to be outstanding. Guys, with that said, our time is against us. But Chalo, I understand you have something you want to say. Go ahead, Chalo.
Real quick, like you got Frank Reyes says, I remember they had the star witness in our county.
That. Yeah.
That was Imperial County.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Frank, make sure you watch it next week, because when we have Ron Newquist, I'm sure that he'll be able to address that. Great comment. Chalo, any last words for Steve or Jim?
Hey, you know what, guys? Like always, it's a pleasure. You know what, David? Something we can do it later on, maybe hopefully within the next year or so. Maybe we can have a reunion, man. Have all our guests. We can, do a little weekend or something, or a day, go eat lunch somewhere in San Diego or something like that. I would like to get to know
because we're not getting paid.
And who's going to pay the flights in the
Hey,
hotel?
no, I said, hey, you know what? Wait, we're tax write-offs, bro.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll form a 501c3 and we'll give you a receipt for that.
Yeah. Well, one day we will. Well, without a doubt, we're going to meet each other at one of the conferences. Your big conference in San Diego. Maybe we could all meet there, Steve. Get us a one-day pass or something for that big conference that you have in San Diego.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you could do that. When is it? Is it in June?
We're in San Diego next year.
What's the month? When is it? Is September?
November?
I'm not. No, I think it's like May or June, and it's the International Narcotics Interdiction Association.
Okay.
We get cops from all over the world. It's a lot of fun. We're having it in Chicago this week, starting Friday.
Okay.
So that's why I have to come up, set up my trailer, drive back to San Diego, and my wife and I are going to jump on the flight to Chicago.
That's awesome. Yeah. Benny, any last words, Benny?
Well, it's not last words, but I got a question for both Jim and Steve. What are the key points here, and what are the lessons for law enforcement? I know you, Steve, covered a couple of them. What are the main? What are the lessons to be learned from this investigation?
Well, Steve said it. It's communication. If you're sharing information, so everybody doesn't know everything. If there's some intel over here and some information over here, it stays there unless you share it. And if it's shared, then good things are going to happen.
Steve, anything you want to add on that?
Exactly what Jim said. This was going on from 2004 to 2007, and it was going on in our backyard, and there were 11 murders. There were about 18 kidnappings that were reported, not in a timely fashion, but reported, through a concerned person or somebody that didn't want to be go to the police, but they came to DEA or FBI, or they went to a kidnapping support group, and we'd find out through that because it's really a long story, but we need to share that information. And Jim and I and a lot of the different agencies, sheriff, customs, DEA, FBI, San Diego PD, San Diego sheriff, we all got together, just people that cared, got together in a room, once every 2 weeks and talked about the influx of kidnappings in San Diego, and we would share that information. Now, had we got information on the first 4 homicides, it probably would have came to a quicker resolution. And so, when you see cartel signs, calling cards, plain as day, call the people that know, like Ron Newquist did, and Jeff Maxim from the San Diego Sheriff's Office. Those guys got us going on this, and ultimately they saved a lot of lives.
Excellent. Steve, we will see you next week. You're going to be with us, right? Are you going to be in Chicago, or are you going to be joining us with Ron Newquist?
I'm going to try my best. And Ron is amazing. Ron's amazing. And he does this class on his own. So, and he knows it, like the back of his hand. So if I can't make it, I'll try to make it just to cheer him on. But I know Ron could cover it. And, you might want to grab his wife too. Tammy Ballard was part of the case too. It'd be neat to have husband and wife team on it. And she's a pretty face too.
Yes, she is. Yes. Jim, any last words?
No, just Dave, Chalo, Benny, thanks for inviting us back, man.
Thank you. Thank you guys once again. Mil gracias, and be safe, and God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Que se cuiden.
Gracias. Wow. Very interesting. Benny, tell us about Ron Newquist. I know we covered it already, but I'm sure you have something to talk about next week.
Well, you pretty much covered it all, David. I mean, he's coming. He's going to join us. He's going to talk about the San Diego PD cases and stuff that can be shared. As far as how they collected evidence and evidence processing, just open source stuff. Obviously we can't discuss everything that the crime lab does and technology and all that, or else we'd be giving away game. But he's going to be on. He's a very interesting guy, as you know him well. He's excited about coming on.
Yeah. Chalo, when you talk about legends, this guy's a young guy, but I never had the chance to work with him or around him. I wish I would have, because he was one of those guys that was like Doug Collier. I mean, the guy was just a hustler, was just a digger. And I'm excited to have him on, because to me, he's a legend. He not only on this case, but he worked on so many other cases. It's truly an honor to have him on. And the good thing about Ron is that he speaks his mind. He's not going to cut corners. So we're going to ask him, about what were some of the problems that he faced, and I'm sure he's going to share it with us from the bottom of his heart. But I'm looking forward. But guys, with that said, tomorrow night we have a great show. We have Mike Vigil with us. We're going to be going through. We got Doug back on the show. We got Sean is with us now. He's no longer on our show here. He's now joining us on Ash Wednesday because he wants to smoke a cigar with us. And we got Bobby with us, and we got Mike Vigil. We are going to talk about the last narc. We're not going to put anybody down. We're not going to call anybody a liar, but we're going to be going over certain segments that came out in that, not only the series, but also in the book. Is it truth or fiction? So have an open mind. Join us tomorrow at 5:00. Whether you smoke cigars or not, doesn't matter. Have your drink, whether it's water, whether it's whiskey, whether it's bourbon. Join us tomorrow. It's going to be a great episode. Mike Vigil went to the academy years back when there was horses and buggies with Hector Beleres, and he knew him in the academy. He knew him throughout his career, and he's looked at The Last Narc. He's read the book, and we're gonna basically discuss truth or fiction. It's gonna be a great episode, outstanding episode, guys. With that said, Chalo, last words.
Like I always say, integrity means everything, buddies. Everything. Don't do things, that look good. Como en español, no hagan cosas buenas que parezcan malas, ni malas que parezcan buenas, right? So don't do things that are bad that look good, or don't do things that look good that are bad. Stay. You know what? God bless you guys. One thing we forgot to mention. You know what? A lot of us, grew up Catholic, then we switched over to another, to following Christ. And rest in peace, Pope Francisco. Been sick for a while, man. So for a lot of people, it's a lot of people are having a hard time. So may you rest in peace.
Amen. Manny?
Mine's a training lesson. What happened with the Chula Vista cop when he encountered those 3 cartel guys in that pursuit, and they stopped and they came out and they opened fire. 16 shots taken at him, and he had the will to survive, and he survived. What would you do? Just think about that. Yeah,
without a doubt. And you know what? I think we're going to cover it more in depth next week. We'll show some videos on it. Hopefully Steve could join us. It's going to be great. I know Ron will definitely cover it. He covers it in his PowerPoint. But guys, with that said, we will see you hopefully tomorrow. It's going to be an excellent episode. Like I always say, you know what? Live a purpose-driven life. Live every day like it's your last day on earth. And you know what? Trust the process. No matter what process you're going through, whether it's a new job, whether you're without a job, whether you're retired or you're on the job, there's always a process to everything. But above and beyond, trust the author. And our author is Jesus Christ, and he's your author. So whenever you find yourself in any difficult situation, you know what? Call upon your God, upon Jesus Christ, and I guarantee you, your problems may not be solved the way you want them to be solved, but they will be solved according to his will. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow on Ash Wednesday, 5:00. God bless you.
Desde abajo como varios comenzamos, yo empezaba desde los 14 años. Piensan que muy fácil es el contrabando, va subiendo y los putazos aguantando, y está muy cabrón. Un momento voy a prenderme un tabaco, pa' seguirles con la historia que hoy les canto. El amigo la confianza fue ganando, cada día se fue más relacionando, sigue firme hoy. Estatales con rango de inteligencia, en la tía me cayeron a la fuerza. 5 horas me tuvieron secuestrado, pa' acabarla me tumbaron una feria, la alcancé a librar. Pero es como todo, cuando está subiendo, rolan los mitotes, te cae el gobierno, hoy hasta la DEA me pide unos versos, quieren que les cante, yo no estoy de acuerdo. Hace poco un sheriff me torció moviendo, jale de trabajo, pa' que se los niego, casi estoy seguro que fue por un dedo, alguna madrina por aquí en San Diego.